The first time you use free CRO Tool, you'll create your account simply by signing in. Once you've signed in, you'll be asked to read and accept the terms and conditions before you can continue. After accepting them, your account is ready to use. We now arrive at the projects screen. A project represents a website that we want to run experiments on, so we'll start by creating our first project. Give the project a name and enter the website address. In this example, we're setting up Northern Family Kitchen, which is the real website we'll use throughout this tutorial. By default, the initialization script will include all visitors and testing. It's important to consider your visitor's cookie and consent preferences when configuring this, particularly for websites operating in the UK, Europe, and other territories with consent requirements. This website uses CookieBot, so I'm using the free CRO Tool CookieBot example logic. This means visitors will only be entered into testing and the associated cookies used if they've accepted marketing cookies. Your own configuration may be different depending on the consent management platform you use and the consent requirements that apply to your website. Free CRO Tool now gives us the JavaScript tag that needs to be installed on the website. This is the code that allows free CRO Tool to apply the changes we create in our experiments and track what's happening during a test. We now need to add this tag to every page of the website. If you're using a content management system, such as Shopify or WordPress, there are a few different ways of adding a JavaScript tag across your site. For a hand-coded website like this one, a developer will usually make the change to the site's code and upload the updated files to the hosting service. The important thing is that the tag appears on every page, so free CRO Tool can run tests and track activity wherever it's needed. This is probably the most technical part of setting up free CRO Tool, but the good news is that you only need to do it once. Back in free CRO Tool, we can continue configuring the project. We're also going to connect the project to Google Analytics because free CRO Tool uses GA4 data to measure experiment performance. Because we've made changes to the project, we need to publish them. Any changes made will not take effect until they are published. So we click Publish Tag. Once the project has been configured, we're ready to create our first test. For this example, we're going to test a change to the Northern Family Kitchen homepage. Here, we're choosing the page where we want the experiment to run. Normally, this drop-down will contain URLs that have been visited and recorded in Google Analytics during the last 30 days. Northern Family Kitchen is a very new website, so the page we want isn't available in the list yet. Instead, I'm simply copying the URL from the website and pasting it in manually. A test needs an audience to include in the test. We use a built-in one called All Visitors for this tutorial. It is basically everyone, regardless of their device type or browser or any other specific parameter. You may want to run tests just on mobile, in which case use the relevant one or create a specific one for that case. Now we can open the visual editor. The visual editor opens on your site, so it allows you to edit things directly on the test page. When I select an element on the page, the editor gives me controls for changing it. You can edit things such as text and styling, hide elements, or make other visual changes to create the challenger experience. For this experiment, I'm changing the main hero area of the homepage. The idea is to give the newsletter sign-up more prominence and see whether that encourages more visitors to subscribe. Once the change has been created, we can save it and return to the test setup. At this point, we've defined where the experiment runs and what the visitor will see when they're assigned to the challenger. Before launching anything to real visitors, we're going to test it in staging. This lets us see the experiment working on the actual website without making it part of the live experiment yet. Because we've made changes to tests, we need to publish them before they can be seen on the live side, either as live tests or staging ones. Now we can check the staging version and make sure our changes look and behave exactly as expected. Before launching a test, you should QA it across as many different platforms and devices as reasonably possible. That should include desktop operating systems such as Windows, Mac, and Linux, as well as Android and iOS phones and tablets. For mobile devices and tablets, remember to check both portrait and landscape orientations. The aim is to make sure your experiment works properly for all the different ways your visitors might experience your website. We clicked the new CTA called Newsletter in our experiment just now. This fired an event off to Google Analytics. Let's quickly check in Google Analytics real-time report that the click event called test1_clicked hero appears in the real-time view with a little drill down from free CRO_click, then name. There it is. Next, we need to tell free CRO Tool what success looks like. We're adding a page conversion so that an action on the website can be measured as a KPI for this experiment. We created a location entry that is for the URL that we want to either test on or track a website user visiting. We get a notification at this point because I've changed the name of the conversion point we want to track. This is because if we change this after a test has gone live, we will see two distinct conversions tracking. The original name one will no longer track, and the new name one will. So if it's a small typo in the conversion, it's probably worth leaving. I'm testing that journey on the website now by completing the action that we want visitors to take. All events created by a free CRO Tool experiment, whether it's in staging or live, are prefixed with free CRO_. There are three main types: free CRO_impressions, records when a visitor enters a test, free CRO_click, records a click on something we're tracking, and free CRO_page, records a visit to a page we're tracking. When we drill down into these events, the name will correspond to the name we gave that item in the free CRO Tool interface. In Google Analytics, we can check that the event has arrived. That confirmation is useful because it tells us that the measurement side of the experiment is working before we start collecting live test data. The test now has its audience and page conditions, the challenger we've created, and the conversion we're going to measure. Once you're happy with everything, the experiment can be moved from staging to live. From this point, eligible visitors can start being allocated to the test. We're now in the Google Analytics administration area. Free CRO Tool sends additional information with experiment events, which allows the reporting to distinguish between the test, its variance, and the conversions being measured. For those values to be available properly within Google Analytics, we create the corresponding custom definitions. I'm adding those here using the event parameters generated by Free CRO Tool. This is another important point about the initial setup. These custom definitions only need to be created once. Once they're configured in your Google Analytics property, you don't need to repeat this process every time you create a new experiment. It's important to get these correct. Otherwise, Google Analytics data will not arrive in the reports in Free CRO Tool. It's important once you set a test live that you use an incognito window to verify that you see the test. It may be on your first or second visit. You don't see the test as you're bucketed into the control. So just close your incognito window and open another. Visit the test page, and you should see the test page. Even if you see the control, you can look in Google Analytics real-time reports and hopefully see freecrow underscore impression that belongs to your user and freecrow underscore click and freecrow underscore page. And this is the free CRO tool report for the experiment. At this point, we've only just launched the test, so there isn't enough visitor data yet to tell us anything meaningful about its performance. So, rather than looking at an empty report, let's jump forward and see what this same experiment looks like after we've allowed it to run and collect some real data. We can see how many visitors have entered each variant and use the charts to look at page visits and the conversions we're measuring. As more visitors enter the experiment and more conversions are recorded, these reports give us an increasingly useful picture of whether our change is actually improving performance. Free CRO Tool also calculates the chance that the challenger will beat the control. along with the statistical significance of the result. And that's the complete journey, from creating your free CRO Tool account and setting up your first project, through installing the tag and connecting Google Analytics, to building, testing, and launching your first experiment and analyzing the results.